What up? It's part 2. Right now it's 12:09, so it's November 9th. Phone ran out of time, so I had to do a part 2 of this, but I had to go inside the Greyhound station first and upload that video, then erase it off my phone so I could have another 15 minutes at least. I left off talking about Qais ibn Hubayra and Farwa ibn Musa when they went to speak to the Al-Abna people. So eventually they made it there. Now before I go on, I was going to point out a contradiction in the last one before the phone cut off. I want to point out a contradiction within this chapter because they mentioned how as far as Sanaya that Ziyad ibn Labid and let me see, I'm trying to get it right. You know what, I just go forward and then I bring it up in a second. Anyway, oh, I know what it is. They claim that, and this is within the chapter, that Ziyad ibn Labid and Al-Aswad-Al-Ansi pretty much that basically Ziyad ibn Labid had gave Sanaya eventually to this guy Al-Aswad-Al-Ansi. By the way, this is off the top of the dome. I don't use no fucking notes unless, you know, during my little study process I forget something, then I got to refer back to a note. But when I do these recordings, it's off the head. So I pause sometimes to make sure I get everything right. Anyway, they say that Ziyad ibn Labid had gave him Sanaya after a fight had ensued in which Al-Aswad ibn Al-Aswad-Al-Ansi was called upon by Abu Bakr, who had supposedly been the caliph at this time, to assist Ziyad in some type of fight or rebellion that was going on. Now, I had questioned that, and I knew immediately that that was kind of like an error, or it was erroneous. But by the time I got to the end of the chapter, thank God I had got further validation why that part more than likely may not be true. But they were saying like how after he assisted him and then they defeated or repelled this rebellion, that's when Sanaya was given to him. Now I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense for a couple of reasons. Now, first off, just to start, the chapter in Yemen, which is when they mentioned Al-Muhajir, Sanaya was one of the places that he was given jurisdiction over. It was a couple of other ones too, such as Zur-Ar and also Arimal, which is in southeastern Arabia. It's a pretty big area, but as far as Sanaya, you know, that was given to Al-Muhajir. So the chapter right before this concerning the Banu Waliyah, I had noticed in reading it, I'm like, damn, they make no mention of Al-Muhajir as far as him having jurisdiction over Sanaya at that time. They mentioned how he was called upon to help Ziyad ibn Labid fight against Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais at the time. So I was like, damn, I wonder, like, as far as the interval period of time, because all of this occurred after Muhammad had died, as far as that chapter, I'm like, what the fuck happened to where he didn't have control over Sanaya? And also there was no mention of, as far as my memory is concerned, of Al-Aswad-Al-Ansi. So when I read that chapter before this one, I was like, damn, I wonder what the fuck had happened. But then I had noticed that, like, okay, starting from the last 11, at least the last 11 chapters, all the way up to this one, everything is not completely in chronological order, especially the hadiths or the historians on the subject. So I'm like, okay, sometimes they leave out information and you got to wait till you go further along, then they kind of like make a leap back and then you find out what happened during this interval time. So for example, when I read the chapter about the Banu Waliyah, I was like, okay, I wonder what happened that Al-Muhajir was no longer in control over Sanaya, especially Hathra Mayut, because Ziyad ibn Labid and Al-Muhajir was mentioned as having some jurisdiction over areas in Hathra Mayut. But thank God, when I got to this chapter and I read it, I was like, okay, now I see why Al-Muhajir didn't have control over Sanaya. Which also contradicts his whole assertion of Sanaya being given to Al-Aswad-Al-Ansi. First off, the reason why Al-Muhajir lost control over Sanaya is because Al-Aswad-Al-Ansi defeated him. He raided Sanaya and he defeated him, as well as Khalid ibn Sa'id and the Amil there, a guy named Aban ibn Sa'id, who also comes up in the chapter concerning Yemen as well. I'm not sure if I mentioned him because he was just an Amil there. But you had another Amil also, which was Ma'uth ibn Jabal. But anyway, I was like, okay, so when I read this one, I'm like, okay, that's what happened with him. Now, as far as going back to Ziyad ibn Labid, like I said, he was, when he had to basically defeat this whole rebellion from people of the Kendal tribe as well as the Banu Amr tribe, because they didn't like the sadaqahs that he was obligating, the type of sadaqah that he was obligating the people to pay over to him. Although they mentioned the individual in particular, as far as him, this individual of the Kendal tribe, obviously a very important person, having to pay over camels as sadaqah. And they was trying to get him to change his mind or substitute that particular camel for a different form of a sadaqah, as well as Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais trying to get him, Ziyad ibn Labid, to change his mind also, but he remained steadfast. That was one of the reasons for this whole rebellion in that chapter. Plus, the Banu Waliya tribe supposedly stopped paying the sadaqahs and had a little issue with Muhammad even before he died. So, during that chapter, Al-Muhajir, who was not in control over Sanaya at that point, and I believe it, was asked to assist Ziyad ibn Labid in repelling these people who had created, who were dissidents and decided to link together under Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais to fight against him. So that part, I believe, is true. Again, there was no mention in that chapter about Al-Aswad-Al-Ansi being called to assist. The only other person that they mentioned was a guy named Ikrimah. So going back to this chapter, I'm like, that couldn't have been true that Al-Ansi assisted him, and then after they defeated these people, that's when he was given Sanaya, because in that chapter itself, toward the end, and maybe this is far in the future, another guy named Yala ibn Munya was given Sanaya, or at least in districts surrounding that which Ziyad ibn Labid had. But the whole point is, in this chapter, they mentioned how Al-Ansi raided Sanaya during the lifetime of Muhammad and had control over it, in addition to having control over the Al-Abna people. Now, why is that true? And it makes sense, because when these two people were sent by Muhammad, and again, I'm going to mention their names again, Qais ibn Hubayra and Farah ibn Musayd, this was during the lifetime of Muhammad, because supposedly by the time they made it to where Al-Ansi was, that's when they got word that Muhammad died, even though you got different opinions on the subject. But at least it was around that time period. Now, when they made it there, the reason why they were able to make contact with the Al-Abna people is because Al-Ansi granted them permission to pass through Sanaya. So that's a big hint in itself. That means he definitely had Sanaya already. So Sanaya could not have been given to him later on by Ziyad ibn Labid, because that whole little confrontation between him and the Banu Waliya occurred after Muhammad died. You know, as a matter of fact, the last 3 chapters in itself happened after this one, even though this is subsequent to both of those 3 chapters. And again, I'm talking about the Banu Waliya, the people of the people of I'm fucking it up, Al-Yamama with their Naj, as well as the whole fucking battle of Anu Jur. All of those 3 chapters occurred before this one. So it doesn't make sense that, you know, subsequent to that or subsequent to the life of Muhammad, that Abu Bakr had given Al-Ansi Sanaya. So I believe what they say in this chapter. So he allowed them to pass through Sanaya, which means he had control over Sanaya already. Now, they did mention the reason why he allowed them is because a conversation between Qais ibn Hubayra and Al-Ansi in the midst of that conversation, I don't know exactly what they were talking about, but I'm assuming it had something to do with religion as well. But he supposedly agreed with a lot of what he had to say. So he kind of ingratiated himself with Al-Ansi, thus Al-Ansi allowing them to pass through Sanaya. So when they passed through, they made contact with the Al-Abna people. Now, one of the first people that they ended up convincing was a guy by the name of Fairuz ibn Daylami. Fairuz ibn Ad-Daylami, I believe that was his name. And so through him, that's when they made contact with one of the chiefs as well, and also convinced him to convert to Islam. That's how the whole situation had occurred or whatnot. So later on, they ended up setting up, and I feel like I'm forgetting something again. Hopefully I'm not. And I think I got 3 minutes, so I need to hurry up and speed through this. They ended up setting up Al-Ansi, not Al-Ansi, but Al-Aswad-Al-Ansi to be killed. And they did it through his wife. He was sleeping in bed, and he had a guard outside, and some within this chapter say that Qais ibn Hubayra was the one that actually decapitated his head. Another person says that Fairuz ibn Daylami did, but the whole point is that he ended up being assassinated, and he was set up by his wife, and he died. After that had occurred, that's when they made it known that this guy was killed or whatnot, as far as one of those two, and the Al-Abna people by and large converted to Islam. When that happened, those that followed Al-Ansi, as far as the Ansi people, got executed. The only ones that remained alive are the ones that converted to Islam, but the majority of them got executed. That's pretty much how that story goes. And again, this occurrence is before the last 3 chapters. All right, so again, there is no way that Ziyad ibn Labid would have given Sanaya to Al-Aswad-Al-Ansi if he got killed by the end of this chapter. And this is shortly after the life of Muhammad, but prior to those last 3 chapters concerning the battle of Yamama, the battle of An-Nujair, as well as the battle of Buzaka. All right, that's my reasoning for that and my logic for that. So anyway, that's what happened. Now, as far as like the end of this chapter, the very last like couple of paragraphs, they say that the chief of the Al-Abna people, I think his name was Dafhail, he ended up being killed, and supposedly Qais ibn Hubayra might have had something to do with it. Plus, he wanted to oust the Al-Abna people from Sanaya as well. So Abu Bakr found out about this, and he was infuriated. So he ordered Qais ibn Hubayra to be captured and sent to Medina. Once he faced Abu Bakr made him swear on the pupil of Muhammad that he didn't have anything to do with the death of the chief of the Al-Abna people. He claimed he did not, and after that he was sent with the rest of the people to Syria. Now that's the next chapter, so I guess they go further into northwestern Arabia, because like I say, Syria, as far as the language of this book is concerned, that's northwestern Arabia as well as the Levant. So that's what they say so far. Like I say, they don't always put everything in chronological order. So the next chapters is going to let me know like the intervals of information as far as what happens after the fact. So that's everything, I think. I mentioned everything. I still feel like I'm forgetting something. I hate when I feel like that and then listen to this shit again and be like, damn, I did forget something. I think that's it so far. I mentioned everything. Oh yeah, I know what I'm forgetting. What I wanted to say during the first part of this. The guy Ja'ir ibn Abdallah al-Bajali. I wanted to mention this and it kind of slipped my mind. What I thought was interesting about him, like I say, when I read this chapter, and I've started looking up names of people that I don't know that much about or don't know anything about. I read his name and I found out that his story is kind of similar to Al-Ashari as well, because he had converted a whole group of people as well, just like Al-Ashari did, but he converted 3 times as many people as Al-Ashari. So he had converted about 150 in total. So Al-Ashari, as far as him, like I say, he's the guy that's also mentioned in the chapter concerning in Yemen as well. I mean, he had jurisdiction over Zabid, Aden, and Hathra-Mayut. And I guess I say it, which I still find interesting as far as like wanting to know what the hell happened that he lost control over Hathra-Mayut, and then later on Al-Muhajir had jurisdiction over certain areas there. But like I say, in the future, I guess, as the subsequent chapters or within the subsequent chapters, they'll provide hints and explanations for that. But anyway, he had converted in fucking 616. And he had left Mecca when everybody else left. But when he left, he went back to the place that he was from, which is Zabid. He remained there for 12 years, but during that whole time, he converted about 50 people. And then in 628 AD, he made it back to Kabar after Kabar had been conquered, and he re-linked up with Muhammad, and he had 50 people. That's his story, all right? I thought that was fucking interesting. I think that's about it. I already mentioned everything as far as the Ethiopians, time frame, the whole Christian thing. I'm not sure if I really have to get back into that, because like I say, I already touched on that. And that was just additional information when I did my blog reporting about Yemen, and I was talking about Saint Frumitius and how he made it there in 333, King Ezana, who reigned from 320 to 360 AD, Constantine II, who made it into, I'm not gonna go into all that again, but this is the whole freaking chapter as far as Al-Aswad-Al-Ansi. So the next one is about Syria, and it's getting interesting because I can't wait till they get to the point where they fight against the Romans. I'm really fucking curious about that. And like I say, by the time I get a sufficient amount of information, when I get past the whole entire Rashidun period and a little bit after that, then I could go back to the book, which I can't wait to get to, which is Tariq al-Sudan, as well as Travels of Ibn Battuta. Like I say, I'm trying to get some background information leading up into the spread of Islam through Africa, which I believe was both North Africa and the Sudan as well. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got to say so far. I think my phone about to cut off in 10 seconds. This is for retention purposes, personal study. It's not to do nobody's homework, and also documentation purposes. And I'm not trying to be Islamic. I'm just interested in this part of history because it's relevant to what I'm trying to study overall. There you go. It's your boy JL, Johnny Fraction.